Hi, it's Christina Jamison from the School of Home Ownership. Today we have a special guest who thought that she could not buy a property. Our special guest is Nina Fountain. Hi Nina, thank you for coming.
Great to be here.
Now Nina's done some work with us. Can you explain what sort of work you do? She's a brilliant businesswoman having two businesses.
Oh, thank you. So I'm a management consultant and I am a podcast host, but I've also had a side hustle, if you like, for the last 7 years of styling women for their corporate look. And so I've brought together the styling and the podcast hosting and the management consulting to support you with School of Home Ownership and your podcast styling online. So this new look today is as a result of the work that we've done together.
And you may not know, but there was definitely a bit of work that was done in the background. So thank you for that, Nina. Now, what I'd like to be able to do is if you could share with us your personal journey of buying a home. And as we said before, you didn't think that you could buy a home. So explain the thought process to us.
Yeah, I was in my mid-20s and I had in mind that a 10% deposit was the only way I would get into the property market. I was working in the UK at the time and I had a professional job. I was earning well there. I was able to travel. I was over there. And I just wasn't thinking about the possibility really of property. And I also had this 10% in mind and it didn't get me thinking at all that now was the time to do property. And then we went out to dinner, yourself, Ken, and myself, and we were in Cronulla at the time and having, I think, Thai. And I was talking about property, and you had already been doing mortgage broking then for a few years, at least a couple of years. And you explained to me that there were options that would mean that buying a house now at that time was open to me, that it wouldn't necessarily be a 10% deposit that was required, that there could be other options as well about ways to get into the market. The First Home Buyers Grant gave me a cash injection and stamp duty relief as well. So it was really helpful to have access to that and have your knowledge to help me see that I actually could get into the property market sooner than I realised.
Yes, it was. I guess you went from zero to having your eyes opened, and then you had the opportunity. So you gave me a headache because you were going to go overseas. But now that you've decided that, hey, it was a possibility, what happened next?
Then we left dinner and I crossed the road and there was a real estate agent over the road. I looked in the window because now I had my eyes open that this was a possibility. And I saw that there was a property on there that looked like almost exactly the number of the unit that I was living in. And I realized it was the unit over the hallway from the one that I was actually living in at the time. So I knew the building, I knew the owners, I knew everything about that place. And I was immediately interested in buying that property. It was within my price range.
So we went from zero to buying a property in a space of about a week or?
Yeah, it was actually that quick. I think I had a week to go before I got on the plane to go back to the UK to work. And it wouldn't have happened except that you were so patient navigating things like we needed to install power of attorney. There were documents that had to be signed in person. So my power of attorney had to turn up for those things. And there were documents flying across the world to try to get this all to happen. And there were just kind of constant issues actually with it. So it's not something I highly recommend to buy a property when you're out of the country. But you were incredibly patient and managed to pull it off, which was remarkable.
That was great. Great result for you. And happy for you. I was very happy for you, Nina. And if we talk about location, so if I could just state it was great. You knew the area, you knew the neighbourhood, you knew the building, you knew the tenants, you knew the issues. That's a really, really good place to be. I've seen people, and I do not recommend it, that have bought interstate, usually for investment. It rings alarm bells for the bank, and they actually have a valuation, and they request a valuation. And the valuation has often come back considerably less than the purchase price. So 10 to 20% actually, in some cases, in the worst cases. And what actually happens is that the person that's selling the property will actually give a cash injection. So they'll give you a refund. But what happens with that is that it's a false economy. So you bought a property, say, I don't know, it was in a small town, somewhere, say $450,000. It was sold to you for $500,000, but the property is actually only worth $450,000. So that's one of the issues that you have to consider: is know the area, feel comfortable with where you're buying, and know the building. And you can't do that when you're flying in and out interstate. So thank you for that, Nina. Now the rest of it. So you moved in, out, changed states, but you decided that you were going to sell it. So what was the thought process behind that?
I had a few things in mind. I had realised by that point that I may not be a property investor with your help, in that I was constantly trying to tweak my investment in the property by upgrading or leveraging equity, or thinking is now the time to sell. And you really pointed out that ideally a property investor will buy and hold, and that's the predominant thing that you're doing as a property investor. And I realized I was tweaking. I was really I was very active in that investment, constantly every couple of months thinking, what else can I do with it? So I had, I think as a friend you had got me to think about that, whether or not property investing was my path. And that was one thing. Then also the fact that I was no longer in Sydney. I had someone who was managing it for me, and that went reasonably well, but there were one or two issues with that. So it was a little less comfortable, I guess, than me actually being there and being able to check things. Something like I came back one time and Foxtel had been installed in the wall, and I wouldn't have wanted that to be as visible or as prominent as it was right there. So I probably, if it had been me, I would have seen if they could install it in a slightly different spot. Things like that just made me a little bit like, oh, it's not quite how I would do it. And then also I was concerned about sea level rise at the time. It was not something that was being factored into insurance policies, but I thought that's coming. It might be 5, 10, 15 years before it affects properties, but property cycles are in 7 to 10 year runs. So do I wait for the next one? Do I hold on? What do I do? And I just decided, with where my life was at the time, the market had risen, that there was a good chance that I'd make profit on selling it, and I may as well take advantage of the fact that the market was high at that point and sell with all of those factors considered. So I did sell, and I did make a profit and have some money to invest elsewhere. And I was very happy with the profit. It was a good sale.
Yes, it's not often that you go wrong with property. Now, if I take you back a couple of steps, there's two things that you did with that property when you were selling that were really good. The first one is that you followed the real estate agent's instructions and actually gave a low value for the property, a lower value than what you thought. And what that did is it created urgency. People were, there were so many people going through the unit having a look at it. So people actually, as you said, paid more than, the asking price, and, were competing against each other, having an auction. It has to be the right market, but actually having a decent value, a bit lower, created that urgency. So that was good. And the second thing is that I remember the pink in that place. I don't know if you remember the pink, but
I do remember the pink in the bathroom. Definitely. It was not pretty. Mm-mm.
So, and I remember, that's one thing that definitely stuck in my head. And I thought this might be a place to actually make a bit of money. So we took a bit of the pink out, and there was white knight in those. At that time, you could actually just use white knight to paint over the tiles to get rid of all those bright pink tiles. So that was good because it made the property a lot more likable, a lot more well presented. So that was good. So two ways to actually, make an extra bit of profit. So well done to you, and happy for you.
And I did swap out all the the 70s coloured amenities in the bathroom as well. So it became much more clean, kind of white look with little hints of green, and it was a much more modern feel. And yeah, with your advice and what I've been looking into, I knew that the bathroom was a place to invest if you want to increase the value of the property. And even though the tiles, I'd never thought of that option. I remember you suggesting it, and I just never thought that was a possibility. There was a weekend where I did 7 treatments on the wall, including I think 3 or 4 of the tiles, and I removed the wallpaper at the same time and then painted the walls. And it was an absolutely mad weekend, but it did result in a fantastic sale, and it was good advice, and I'm glad we did it that way.
It was worth it. Now that's good. Well, thank you for taking us through your personal property journey from no hope to buying a home and then making a great profit. So well done to you. So thank you for spending time with us. And if you could just tell people how to contact you.
Yeah, I will. But I also want to say that I think a lot of those points of success were because I was in contact with you, and I stayed in contact with you, and you stayed in contact with me. And it really surprised me that you continued to take an interest in the property. And as a mortgage broker, which is how I understood your role, and that's the title, I knew plenty of other mortgage brokers who get the mortgage deal and they're done. But I know from working done with me, but also with other friends and family, that you maintain an interest in it, and you are really not just that kind of, okay, you've got your mortgage and now I'm out of the picture. So you have a personal investment in making sure that people continue to get out of the property what it was originally intended to do for them. So that's made a huge difference. So thank you, Christina, because that's absolutely worth acknowledging. You're not the average mortgage broker, that's for sure.
Thank you for that. And yes, I do have a personal passion for helping people with property and sharing my knowledge, and hence the School of Home Ownership. So thank you for that. But let's get back to how you're going to help people with podcasts. How do people contact you?
Yeah, so anyone wants to be seen in their best light, happy to do a similar thing as what we've done, or in the personal styling aspect, so I style women, they can reach me, Nina, at stylegorgeous.com. And there's a number of different ways people can engage with me there, everything from something quick and online through to a handheld service. And then as a management consultant, workplace strategist and change specialist, they can reach me, Nina, at theworkspaceconnection.com.
Thank you very much for your time, Nina.
Such a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
And if you want some more hints and tips, you can head on to School of Home Ownership. Thank you.